Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. We continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 4, Chapter 29, Text 61. Shayanam imam utsrijya
Shyanam imam utsrijya
vasantam purusho yatha
vasantam purusho yatha
karmatmani ahitam bhute
karma atmani ahitam bhunte
tadrisheniterena va.
tadashene itarena va.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The living entity, while dreaming, gives up the actual living body. Through the activities of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up this gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or a demigod's body on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. Because Prācīnabarhi was asking Nārada Muni, does anybody remember what specific question he asked?
It was because the Nārada Muni was telling that the bodies of two types soul. So like I think he was asking के like हमारे पूर्व जन्मों के फल का भोग, like he was asking something about
That's
that.
right. Yeah, that's right. But
what was it exactly? Yeah.
That how can we suffer or enjoy the results of our past activities of one body in another body when we are taking a new body? Prācīnabarhi was asking that. So although the root of distress and happiness is the mind, intelligence, and ego, a gross body is still required as an instrument for enjoyment. So the feelings of happiness and distress is in the mind, intelligence, and ego. And through this gross body, we are enjoying. The senses are the gross body, no? So then with the gross body, well, actually, our real senses are not this eyes and ears that we can see, you know. Bhagavatam in the matter of creation tells us our real senses are covered. The gross body may change, but the subtle body continues to act. Unless the living entity gets another gross body, he will have to continue in a subtle body or a ghostly body. One becomes a ghost when the subtle body acts without the help of the instrumental gross body. So when one gives up the gross body, we say one dies. So, but the subtle body is there with the soul. And if the soul does not take another gross body, is only in the subtle body, is called ghostly body. As stated in this verse, Shayanam imam utsrijya svashantam. The gross body may lie on a bed and rest, and even though the machinery of the gross body is working, the living entity may leave, go into a dream, and return to the gross body. You know, because when we are sleeping, our mind takes us so many different places. So the soul is leaving the gross body, and with the subtle body, it's going to different places. And then it comes back. When he returns to the body, he forgets his dream. Similarly, when the living entity takes on another gross body, he forgets the present gross body. The conclusion is that the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and ego, creates an atmosphere with desires and ambitions that the living entity enjoys in the subtle body. Actually, the living entity is in the subtle body, even though the gross body apparently changes, and even though he inhabits the gross body on various planets. All the activities performed by the living entity in the subtle body are called illusory because they are not permanent. Because, so what Prabhupada is explaining to us is our happiness and distress. It's coming from the mind, intelligence, and false ego. And so, because it's not permanent, it's called illusory. It's temporary. Liberation means getting out of the clutches of the subtle body. Liberation from the gross body simply involves the transmigration of the soul from one gross body to another. When the mind is educated in Krishna consciousness or higher consciousness, in the mode of goodness, one is transferred either to the upper heavenly planets or to the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planets. So, liberation, what is really liberation is that we can get rid of this subtle body, which is made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. When the soul is giving up one gross body to another gross body, the subtle body still remains. Only at liberation can we get free of this subtle body. So here Prabhupada is pointing out how one can go to the heavenly planets or to the spiritual world. Heavenly planets means the consciousness is in the mode of goodness. So we see our consciousness is taking us to our next body. The situation of our subtle body, our mind, intelligence, and false ego is preparing our next body. So if the consciousness is in the mode of goodness, higher consciousness, then one can get a demigod body in the heavenly planets. And if one is in Krishna consciousness, one can go to the spiritual world. One therefore has to change his consciousness by cultivating knowledge received from Vedic instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the disciplic succession. So, we are out there to change so many things, but are we willing to change our consciousness? Because what we actually need to work on is our consciousness. And how we can change the consciousness? By cultivating knowledge received from instructions from God through the parampara. Means hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, from the devotees. And that's how gradually our consciousness can change. And that's how we can cultivate knowledge. If we train the subtle body in the life by always thinking about Krishna, we will transfer to Krishna lok after leaving the gross body. So Prabhupada is saying, what is the work that we have to do? Train our mind. Always think of Krishna. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Man mana bhava mad bhakto. So you see, we don't have to change our external situation. It's only our consciousness that needs to change. And that's the reason Lord Chaitanya said, you stay where you are. You just hear and chant. Because by this hearing and chanting, our consciousness can change. So this is confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyakva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjana. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. So Krishna is telling to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. He's saying that try to understand that Krishna's appearance and activities are transcendental. They are not material. Now Krishna's Janmashtami coming up next week. So we have to try to understand Krishna's appearance is not like our appearance in the material world. We are forced. We don't, nobody asks us which planet you want to be born, which species, which family, which situation. Nobody asks us. We are just forced, put inside a body. Krishna, he chooses who are going to be his parents, where he's going to come, when is he going to come, what is he going to do, everything. Krishna chooses himself. And how he appears in his four-armed form with ornaments, with his clothes on, everything. Yeah, that's how he appears in front of Devki. And he's not like pushed out of her womb. He just stands in front of her. He just appears in front of Devki and Vasudev. But for us, it's not like that. We are force pushed out of the womb, and we are covered with all sorts of fluids, and we are crying. So there's a difference in Krishna's appearance and our appearance. And Krishna is saying, try to understand that his appearance is transcendental. His leelas are transcendental, means spiritual, eternal. They're going on. Krishna's somewhere or the other, he keeps celebrating Janmashtami in some universe, some planet or the other. His pastimes are eternal. Some universe or the other, he's celebrating the Damodar Leela, being tied by Mother Yashoda. So all his pastimes are eternal. So his pastimes are going on eternally in this material world, and his pastimes are going on eternally in the spiritual world also. Spiritual world also, his pastimes are eternal. So Krishna is saying, if we can try to understand that Krishna's appearance and activities are transcendental, then we can also go to the spiritual world. We don't need to be here in the material world anymore. So thus the change of the gross body is not very important, but the change of the subtle body is important. The Krishna consciousness movement is educating people to enlighten the subtle body. The perfect example in this regard is Ambarish Maharaj, who always engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, Sabhay Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. Similarly, in this life, we should always fix our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, who is present in his Archa Vigraha, the incarnation of the deity in the temple. So one may say, oh, how I can fix my mind on Krishna. Think of the deity. We should also always engage in his worship. If we engage our speech in describing the activities of the Lord, and our ears in hearing about his pastimes, and if we follow the regulative principles to keep the mind intact for advancing in Krishna consciousness, we shall certainly be elevated to the spiritual platform. So Prabhupada is saying, with the ears and the mouth, hear and chant about Krishna. With the mind, think of the deity and worship the deity. And like this, all our limbs will be used in Krishna's service. Worshipping the deity, cooking for the deity, offering flowers, offering incense, so many things offering to the deity. So then at the time of death, the mind, intelligence, and ego will no longer be materially contaminated. So that's what we need to change, our consciousness. The living entity is present, and the mind, intelligence, and ego are also present. When the mind, intelligence, and ego are purified, all the active senses of the living entity become spiritual. Thus, the living entity attains his Satchidananda form. So we are the living entity. We are spirit souls, individual spirit souls. We are not the body. And every soul, each of us, have a Satchit Ananda form, a Swarup, a form which is not material, but Satchit Ananda. So the Supreme Lord is always in his Satchidananda form, but the living entity, although part and parcel of the Lord, becomes materially contaminated when he desires to come to the material world for material enjoyment. So Krishna, he never gets covered by a material body. That's the difference between Krishna and us. Krishna is Satchidanand, we are also Satchidanand. But we get covered by a material body. We get covered, but Krishna never gets covered. We get this desire to enjoy the material world. So to enjoy the material world, we need a material body. Then we get this material body. The prescription for returning home back to Godhead is given by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita 9:34. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evashyasi yukvevam atmanam madparayana. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So this is Krishna's instruction. It's the most confidential instruction in Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 9, the title is Most Confidential Knowledge. And this is the last verse in chapter 9. And this is the most confidential knowledge that Krishna is telling us, instruction that Krishna is giving us. With our mind, what is he saying? He's always think of me. He's not saying think of something inside me, outside me, think of my knowledge or think of my conscience. He's just saying always think of me. We just need to accept Krishna's instructions as they are. We don't need to misinterpret them. We don't need to make out some other meanings of them. Just accept Krishna's instructions. So think of Krishna as he is. Krishna is saying, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Being completely absorbed in me means the consciousness is fixed on Krishna. Surely you will come to me. That is liberation. Not that we become Krishna after we get liberated. No, but we live with Krishna. We have a happy life with Krishna, loving relationship with Krishna. We can see Him face to face, offer service to Him in our spiritual body, in our spiritual form. So somehow or the other, we should try to get this desire that, oh, I also want to go to spiritual world. I would also like to see Krishna face to face. Somehow or the other, we should try to get like this desire. Mamayate manasa yadya
Mam ete manasa yat yat
asav aham iti bruvan
aso aham iti bruvan
graniyat tat puman radham
grahiyat tat pumam radham
karma yena punarbhava.
karma yena punarbhavah.
The living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this, I am that, my duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. These are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoctions. Thus, he gets another body. As long as one is absorbed in the bodily conception, his activities are performed on that platform. This is not very difficult to understand. In the world, we see that every nation is trying to supersede every other nation, and that every man is trying to advance beyond his fellow man. All these activities are going on under the name of advancement of civilization. Yeah, isn't it? We think, okay, I am this, I am that, I have to do this, I am supposed to do this. All these are mental impressions, Nārada is saying. And these are temporary activities. But Krishna fulfills our desire. Krishna fulfills. Hare Krishna. There are many plans for making the body comfortable, and these plans are carried in the subtle body after the destruction of the gross body. It is not a fact that after the gross body is destroyed, the living entity is finished. Yeah, we live on. We are the living entity. The body is always dead. We are not the body, we are the individual soul. The living entity is the individual soul. Although many great philosophers and teachers in this world are under the impression that after the body is finished, everything is finished, this is not a fact. So there is some popular belief, oh, anyway, once the body dies, once you die forever. Oh, so do whatever you want. But no, the scriptures are telling us that we are the soul and we give up the gross body, we take up another gross body based on our activities. Krishna is telling us in the Bhagavad Gita, Dehinosmin yatha dehe. So Narad Muni says in this verse that at death, one takes his plans with him, graniya, and to execute these plans, he gets another body. So we see our consciousness, our plans. The soul, we are always making plans with our mind. I'm going to do this. I wish I can do this and that. And so we may give up this body, this gross body, which we can see. But the desires are carried in the subtle body. And then to fulfill those plans, we get another body. This is called Punarbhava. When the gross body is finished, the plans of the living entity are taken by the mind, and by the grace of the Lord, the living entity gets a chance to give these plans shape in the next life. This is known as the law of karma. As long as the mind is absorbed in the laws of karma, a certain type of body must be accepted in the next life. So, by our mind, we are creating our next body. By our desires, by our consciousness right now, we are creating our next body. Karma is the aggregate of fruitive activities conducted to make this body comfortable or uncomfortable. We have actually seen that when one man was about to die, he requested his physician to give him a chance to live 4 more years so that he could finish his plans. This means that while he was dying, he was thinking of his plans. After his body was destroyed, he doubtlessly carried his plans with him by means of the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. Thus, he would get another chance by the grace of the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul, who's always within the heart. So Krishna is kind. He understands, oh, we are making this plan, that plan, but the time in this body is finished. Then by Krishna's grace, by Paramatma's grace, we get another body in which we can fulfill our plan. Then again, we create so many more plans. Then, after we give up that body, we get another body to fulfill the plans. And like this, since time immemorial, we have been in this material world because our plan making doesn't finish. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto matasmrita jnanam apohanam cha. In the next birth, one acquires remembrance from the super soul and begins to execute the plans begun in the previous life. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita in another verse. So Krishna in 15th chapter, he is saying, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto matasmriti jnanam apohanam cha. He's saying that knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness is coming from me. Krishna is the Paramatma in our heart. And he is the one who reminds us. He is the one who helps us forget. And he is the one who gives us knowledge. So when we give up one body, take up another body, Krishna reminds us, hey, you had this plan, Now come on, work on it. And then, of course, Krishna facilitates the fulfillment of the plan by the agency of the material world. So, Bhagavad Gita, another verse, Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutana hriddesha janatishtate brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra ruptani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Bhagavad Gita 1861. So this machine, this material body is a machine given to us by the material energy. And Paramatma is sitting in our heart. And he is the one, by his grace, we are able to fulfill our desires, directing the wanderings. We are wandering here in this material world. Here Krishna is saying wanderings of the living entities. Lord Chaitanya also in Charitamrita says that Brahmanda Brahmite Kauna Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata, that we are wandering in this universe. And when one is fortunate, by the mercy of Guru and Krishna, one gets the seed of devotional service. Like how somebody goes around, they leave their home and they're wandering here and there. That's what we are doing. We left our home and we are wandering in this material. But Krishna is kind. Krishna's devotees are kind. They keep coming again and again to tell us, hey, come back home. Why are you wandering here? Come back. Come back. Take up this hearing and chanting. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And come back. So situated on the vehicle given by the material nature and reminded by the super soul within the heart, the living entity struggles all over the universe to fulfill his plans, thinking, I'm a Brahmana, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm an American, I'm an Indian, and so on. All these designations are of the same essence. There's no point in becoming a Brahmana in preference to an American or becoming an American in preference to an Indian. After all, these are all bodily conceptions under the modes of material nature. Because all these designations are to do with the body, and we are not the body. We are individual soul. Each of us is an individual soul, not the body. And we are continuing to think we are the body by, we continue to think, oh, I'm born in this land, so I'm Indian, or I'm a man, or I'm a woman, I have to do this, I have to do that. That is bodily conception, and we completely forget our true identity as spirit souls, part and parcel of Krishna. Yathanumiyate chittam
Yatha anumiyate chittam
Ubayet indriye hite
ubhaye indriye ihite
evam prag dehajam karma
evam prak dehajam karma
lakshyate chitta vrittibhi.
lakshyate chitta vrittibhi.
One can understand the mental or conscious position of a living entity by the activities of two kinds of senses, the knowledge acquiring senses and the executive senses. Similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. There's an English proverb that says, the face is the index of the mind. If one is angry, his anger is immediately expressed in his face. Similarly, other mental states are reflected by the actions of the gross body. In other words, the activities of the gross body are reactions of the mental condition. So, what the mind's activities, what are the mind's activities? Thinking, feeling, and willing. And what the mind is thinking, feeling, and willing, that is expressed through our gross body. The willing portion of the mind is manifest by the activities of the body. So, whatever we are doing is because the mind is willing with it. That's why we are doing it. The conclusion is that by the activities of the body and senses, we can understand the condition of the mind. The willing portion is manifest by the activities of the body. What we are willingly doing, when we are willing doing something, so the mind is willing to do something. And that's why we actually do it. The condition of the mind is affected
I
by
just have
past
one question.
activities. Yes.
So that means that if I am willing to, if I'm willing to uh, eat meat or drink, that is because of my past sanskars, right?
Yes.
Right? That is
Yeah.
because of my karmas, the past karmas. That's why I'm doing all that. That if somebody's he has done nothing, but he's just born in a meat eating family. So that's
Yeah. So then
because
again, our desires also will come into
yeah,
action.
okay,
Of course, the
okay.
environment affects a lot. Environment,
Hmm.
of course, affects. But also we are placed in that environment because of the past desire.
Yes. But we are talking here about the man, right? The thinking,
Yeah.
willing, and right? Right now we're talking
So,
about the
yeah. So now what we are trying to understand is what we are doing, what we are
hmm,
thinking is
hmm,
expressed by our action. You know how the
yes,
English thing is, right? Thoughts becomes our words, words become our action, action become our destiny,
yes,
right? There's this
yeah,
English saying. So we are
yes,
analyzing that right now. How thoughts are becoming our destiny. Because they say, right, thoughts become our words, words are becoming our action, actions become our destiny.
hmm,
So actually, it's our thoughts. When we
hmm,
don't control them, then our thoughts are becoming our destiny.
okay, yes,
Mm.
yeah, perfect, yeah,
So
that makes sense.
um,
Thank
yeah. Okay, thank you. The conclusion is that by the activities of the body and senses, we can understand the condition of the mind. Yeah. So by the
you. Hmm,
activity of the body and senses, we can understand the condition of our mind. So our thoughts are relayed as action. The condition of the mind is affected by past activities in the past body. So that's the samskar, what we have done in our previous life.
hmm,
Then we continue doing it. When the mind is joined with a particular sense, it immediately becomes manifest in a certain way. So, like, we are used to doing a certain thing. So we continue doing it, thinking, oh, it's the normal way to act because I've done it in my past body. So I continue to do it in this body. Something like that. For instance, when there is anger in the mind, the tongue vibrates so many maledictions. Similarly, when the mind's anger is expressed through the hand, there's fighting. When it is expressed through the leg, there is kicking. There are so many ways in which the subtle activities of the mind are expressed through the various senses. So the mind's thinking, feeling, and willing are expressed through our body and senses. The mind of a person in Krishna consciousness also acts in a similar way. The tongue chants Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra, the hands are raised in ecstasy, and the legs dance in Krishna consciousness. These symptoms are technically called Ashta Sattvika Vikar. Sattvika Vikar is transformation of the mental condition in goodness or sometimes transcendental ecstasy. So basically, it's the same thing we are trying to understand that how our mind, what we are thinking, feeling, and willing, that is expressed through our activities, through our senses. Is that okay?
hmm, yes, yes.
Okay. Nanubhutam kvachanena
नानुभूतं क्वचानेन
dehe nadrishtam ashrutam
देहेन अदृष्टम अश्रुतम
kadachit upalabhyeta
कदाचित् उपलभ्येत
yadrupam yadrat atmani.
यत् रूपं यादकात्मनि.
Sometimes we suddenly experience something that was never experienced in the present body by sight or hearing. Sometimes we see such things suddenly in dreams. In dreams, we sometimes see things that we have never experienced in the present body. Sometimes in dreams, we think that we are flying in the sky, although we have no experience of flying. This means that once in a previous life, sorry, either as a demigod or astronaut, we flew in the sky. The impression is there in the stockpile of the mind and it suddenly expresses itself. So all the samskars are stored in the mind, all the impressions, all our experiences are stored in the mind. And because the mind is the same, even though we change the body, sometimes we remember these impressions. It is like fermentation taking place in the depths of the water, which sometimes manifests itself on itself, it bubbles on the water surface. Sometimes we dream of coming to a place we have never known or experienced in this lifetime. But this is proof that in a past life we experienced this. The impression is kept within the mind and sometimes become manifest either in dream or in thought. The conclusion is that the mind is the storehouse of various thoughts and experiences undergone during our past lives. So the mind is, it's just capturing, it's like taking photos and storing everything. The memory is not deleted. It keeps storing whatever we are experiencing, what we are thinking, what we are seeing, what we are hearing, all is stored in the mind. Thus, there is a chain of continuation from one life to another, from previous lives to this life, and from this life to future lives. This is also sometimes proved by saying that a man is a born poet, a born scientist, or a born devotee. If, like Maharaj Ambarish, we think of Krishna constantly in this life, Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayi, we will certainly be transferred to the kingdom of God at the time of death. Even if our attempt to be Krishna conscious is not complete, our Krishna consciousness will continue in the next life. So Krishna says, with the mind, always think of me. Prabhupada is saying the same thing. He's saying Maharaj Ambarish was always thinking of Krishna. So think of Krishna. That's how a pure devotee is. Pure devotee says, follow Krishna, what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying, think always of me. So Prabhupada is saying, always think of Krishna. And even if one is not able to be completely Krishna consciousness, then our process continues. Krishna consciousness continues in the next life. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 6:41. Prapya punya kritam lokam ushitva shaswati samam shuchinam shrimatam gehe yoga brashto bijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. So, one who has begun his Krishna consciousness, if he is not able to complete it, he is either born in the heavenly planets where the pious living entities are there, and then after living there for a long time, then he's born again on this earth in a family of righteous people or of business family, where he's again given an opportunity to take up Krishna consciousness. If we rigidly follow the principles of meditation on Krishna, there is no doubt that in our next life we will be transferred to Krishna Lok, Golok Vrindavan. So that is Krishna's promise in Bhagavad Gita. He says, whoever you worship, you will go there. And those who worship Krishna go to Krishna Lok, to Golok Vrindavan. Krishna also says, Antakale Cham, that at the time of leaving the body, when one thinks of him alone, then he attains that same eternal nature as Krishna, goes to Golok Vrindavan. Tenasya tadrisham rajan
Tenasya dasasham rajan
lingino deha sambhavam
lingino deha sambhavam
shraddha shraddhatsvanu shraddhatsvananubhudortho
Shraddhasva ananubhut artho
na manas prashtum arhate.
na manos prashtum arhati.
Therefore, my dear king, the living entity who has a subtle mental covering develops all kinds of thoughts and images because of his previous body, Take this from me as certain. There's no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body. Krishna bahirmukha hana bhoga vancha kare, nikatastha maya tare japatiya dhare, prema vivarta. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the supreme enjoyer. When the living entity wants to imitate him, he's given a chance to satisfy his false desire, to lord it over material nature. That is the beginning of his downfall. So we say, why am I here in the material world? Oh God, why did you make this material world? Why did you put me here? Well, it's because it's our desire to imitate God, our desire to become one with God. So we are put here in this material world to try and fulfill this desire, to give us like a taste of what it is. Because in the spiritual world, we can't do these things. We have this desire to control the material nature. So we are put here in this material world. Peace. Srila Prabhupada says the peace formula. Krishna says one can become peaceful only if one understands that Krishna is the supreme controller. Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Krishna is the supreme proprietor. And Krishna is the best friend of all living entities. Because Krishna is the proprietor, he is the enjoyer and the controller. When we own something, we can enjoy it, we can control it. But what we are thinking is, oh, this material world belongs to me. And so I can enjoy it and I can control it as I want. So as long as he is within this material atmosphere, he has a subtle vehicle in the form of the mind, which is the stockpile of all kinds of material desires. Such desires become manifest in different bodily forms. Srila Narad Muni requests the king to accept this fact from him because Narad is an authority. The conclusion is that the mind is the storehouse of our past desires. And we have this present body due to our past desires. Similarly, whatever we desire in this present body will be expressed in a future body. Thus, the mind is the source of different kinds of bodies. So how with our mind we are creating our future bodies? All our desires are stored in the mind. The mind goes with us in another gross body. Mind forms the subtle body. So the current body we have is based on our past desires. And now with our mind, we are creating our future body. So our desire. If the mind is purified by, yes.
I just have one question. So the desire means when we actually make a desire, like when I actually say Vilasa Kunj Diyo Vas, Yahi Muri Abhilash. So that is what I have said. But then is it that also sometimes when I say, oh, ye machli kitni sundar hai, pani mein kitne maze kariye. So does that is also my desire? Or no,
Yes.
that's not my
Yes,
desire.
it is also.
Really?
Because our
So even
words,
when
we may say something. See, we are saying something. But what is actually our desire? That we know. Right? See, we
no,
may
but
say
like
something.
no, but then sometimes when we are just even appreciating, like, wow, this is such a beautiful fish. Oh my, I mean, not even beautiful fish. When sometimes we say, oh, ये fish कितनी lucky है, पूरे time पानी में रहती है. So is it that our desire, or is it that we are just commenting on it? We will not become the fish in our next life, right? I'm just trying to ask
Yes.
that.
So there is a subtle desire there, right? There is a
Oh,
subtle desire. That's why we are thinking, oh, the fish is so lucky to be swimming like this, and I wish I could be swimming like this. So the subtle desire is there.
okay.
That's the reason we
Oh,
are able to say this thing. That's the reason we are having this thought. That's what we're
hmm.
reading right now, that whatever is coming in our mind is what we have experienced. So maybe we've experienced it before. And that's why we're able to say this or think this.
So that means we should be very, very careful with our words.
Our words, yes.
We should be
Yeah.
careful with our thoughts, but then we should be more careful with our words when we are saying something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we should be, of course, because we have to see how are our words affecting another. Yeah, we have
Hmm.
to careful with our words because our words affect. We just said, right? Our thoughts become words, words become action,
Words.
action becomes destiny.
Hmm. Oh my God. Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, so our desire is what is becoming our destiny.
Hmm.
So it's all in a subtle way, how it's working in a subtle way.
Yeah, this is very dangerous, but yeah, good to know. Something very dangerous.
Hmm. Yeah, because see, Krishna is fulfilling our desire. Krishna is saying, okay, आपको
Yeah.
ऐसा अच्छा लगता है, ठीक है, I'll give you a
Um,
suitable body to
right.
fulfill this desire. I
Right.
will
That's what,
make you a
no,
suitable condition.
no blame. We can't blame anybody for anything. It's our own desire.
It's our own desire. Yeah, yeah. So it's all our desire, you know.
And I really like that part also where you mentioned that nothing can be like, even if we are imagining something or anything that we have seen past somewhere, that's stored in
Yeah,
our storehouse there. That's why we are able to even, say or do that.
yeah,
It's life, right? There was written
yeah.
that.
Prabhupada just mentioned that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So everything is being stored in our mind. And that's
Hmm.
the reason then it's so important for us to purify our consciousness. And then how
Hmm.
we can purify our consciousness. Constant hearing from Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita from the devotees,
Yes.
chanting, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So the more we clean our consciousness, better
Hmm.
situation we are in.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, see,
Yes.
each of us is in a material body. That means we have material desires. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this material body anymore, you know?
Hmm.
Right. Krishna is giving
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
this material body to fulfill our material desires.
Hmm.
So we may think, oh, no, no, I don't have any material desire, but they are there.
But they are there. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So here Prabhupada is pointing, if the mind is purified by Krishna consciousness, one will naturally in the future get a body that is spiritual and full of Krishna consciousness. So such a body is our original form, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms, Jivera Swarupaya Krishnera Nityadas. Every living entity is constitutionally an eternal servant of Krishna. So when we are saying living entity means every soul, each of us is a soul, individual soul. And when our consciousness is purified after we give up this material body, we can be in our spiritual body. Every soul has a spiritual body, and we can be with Krishna in that spiritual body, serve Krishna in that spiritual body, because our eternal position is we are servant of Krishna. The, the dharma of every soul is to serve. You know, dharma of water is liquidity, dharma of fire, dharma of salt is saltiness, dharma of sugar is sweetness. So dharma of every soul is service. So this service continues even after liberation, and in fact, we can really serve in our spiritual body. When we are liberated, we get our spiritual body and we can serve in a spiritual body. If a person is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, he is to be considered a liberated soul even in this life. This is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami. So the pure devotee, he is engaged in Krishna's service. So he is considered a Jivan Mukta. He is considered liberated. Prabhupada was asked by Tamal Krishna Maharaj, how many pure devotees are there on this earth? So Maharaj thought Prabhupada will say one or two. Prabhupada said, how many devotees are there in our movement? At that time, there were about 5,000. So Prabhupada said, oh, so there are about 5,000 devotees. So how Prabhupada said it, because one may not be a pure devotee yet, but he is in the process. He's going to get there. It's a process. Huh? Like the mango. Mango may be green mango, but with time, it will become golden mango. So iha yasya haredasye karmana manasa gira nikhilasva api avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. One who engages in the transcendental service of the Lord in body, mind, and words is to be considered liberated in all conditions of material existence. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1 to 187. So this is the pure devotee. Here Rupa Goswami is referring to the pure devotee because the pure devotee is serving Krishna by his body, mind, and words 24/7. It's not that, okay, I'll serve Krishna from 2 to 4, and then 6 to 8, I'm going to do this, and then 10 to 12, I'm going to do this. No, 24/7. He engages in Krishna's service, and that's how he is liberated, even while he is in this material world. So he's called a Jivan Mukta, the pure devotee. The Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. We must teach people to absorb themselves always in the service of the Lord, because that position is their natural position. One who's always serving the Lord is to be considered already liberated. So here Prabhupada is saying one who is always serving the Lord means the pure devotee. Pure devotee is always serving the Lord, everything for the pleasure of the Lord. He is considered liberated already. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mamcha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityayitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who always engages in the spiritual activities of unalloyed devotional service at once transcends the modes of material nature and is elevated to the spiritual platform. So the pure devotee, because his only desire is how to please Krishna. He has no desire for personal sense gratification, no desire for mystic perfection, no desire for any kind of uh, mysticism or any kind of mental speculation. The pure devotee, by his body, mind, and words, he's always serving Krishna, and so he's liberated. At once transcends the modes of material nature. Means he's no more under the modes of Rajogun, Tamogun, and Sattvagun. He's liberated. So he's on the spiritual platform, he's on the Brahman platform. He's understood, I'm spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna, and it is my duty to engage in devotional service to Krishna. A devotee is therefore above the three modes of material nature and is even transcendental to the Brahmana platform. A Brahmana may be infected by the two baser modes, namely Rajogun and Tamogun. A pure devotee who is free from all material desires experienced on the mental platform and who is also free from empiric philosophical speculation or fruitive activity is always above material conditioning and is always liberated. So the pure devotee, his only desire is to please Krishna favorably, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. He has no personal agenda, no desire for personal sense gratification. He has no more material desire. He has no desire for mental speculation, no desire for mysticism. His only desire is to please Krishna. And such a pure devotee, he's above the modes of nature. So he's even higher than a Brahmana. Brahmana is predominantly in the mode of goodness, but sometimes he gets overcome by passion or ignorance. But a pure devotee is transcended the modes. He's liberated. He's understood, I'm not the body, I'm spirit, soul, part and parcel of Krishna. So he's engaging in Krishna's service. Is that okay?
Yes.
So, did you want to add anything else? Another comment?
No, but so much to, you know, self-realize that how much to think about it. Like
Yeah,
how,
to become self-aware, right? To become aware
yeah,
of
yes,
what we are doing. Mm.
because all that is gifted to us, we are just using it uselessly. The tongue, the eyes, everything.
Yeah,
You're not making the proper use, especially the tongue.
yeah, so true.
So it's very
So true.
dangerous, but at least we know that what we have to do, at least by reading, we know
Yeah,
what should be done. That is
yeah,
the mercy of Srila Prabhupada.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So let's stop here today. Srila
Yeah.
Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Hare Krishna.